Hi guys, good morning. The time now is about 4:46 a.m. in the morning, and I just want to share with you guys something before I go to work today. So for today's sharing vlog, it's about comparing the living costs here in Jakarta versus in Singapore. So I was actually working in Singapore about 4 years ago, so I know roughly about the living expenses and the rent there and the meal costs. And yeah, I'll compare those with the prices here in Jakarta. I'll break it down into three categories. The first one being the meal cost, and then the second one being the rent cost, and then the third one being the transport plus utilities. Alright, so first for the Jakarta cost, for the meal, I roughly spend about maybe 100,000 rupiah per day on a weekday. So if you times that into 20 days on for weekdays, is about 2 million. And then on the weekend, maybe I spend a bit more because maybe I go to a cafe or I go to a restaurant with friends and family. So I typically spend maybe about 200,000 rupiah per day on a weekend. So if you times 8, so it becomes 1.6 million. So plus the previously 2 million, it becomes 3.6 million on a meal cost in Jakarta monthly for me, in my experience. And for the rent in Jakarta, well, actually, currently I'm staying in my parents' house, so I don't have to pay rent. But if I were to live alone as a working professional here in Jakarta, so the cost of renting an apartment here in Jakarta is roughly about 5 to 10 million. It depends on the location and the facilities you're getting. But yeah, let's take an average of 7 million, okay? So 7 million rent cost plus the previously 3.6, so that's already 10.6 million rupiah per month for rent plus meals. Alright, let's talk about the transport plus utilities cost next. So you have to pay maybe your internet bills, your phone bills, plus your transport costs, such as maybe you take the bus or the train, or if you're driving, then the gas price and the parking ticket price. So I calculate everything roughly. I spend about 1.5 million in transport plus utilities per month. So if you add that to the previous total, it becomes roughly about 12.1 million for my total living costs monthly in Jakarta. Right. Next, let's talk about the Singapore costs. So when I was working in Singapore about 4 years ago, so I typically spend about maybe for meals on a weekday about maybe $15 per day on a weekday for meals, and if you times that by 20 for the month, so 15 times 20 is $300 for the weekdays meals, and for the weekend maybe I go to a restaurant or a cafe, so it's a bit more expensive. So it's about roughly $30 per day on a weekend. If you times 8, it becomes $240 for the weekend meals in a month. So 240 plus 300, it becomes 540 dollars for meals in Singapore per month for me, in my experience. So if you add the rent costs on top of that, so renting an apartment in Singapore typically costs about, well, it depends on the location and the facilities. So it typically ranges from 1,200 to 1,800. So let's take the average of 1,500. So 1,500 rent cost plus the previously $540 for meals cost. So that brings you to a total of $2,040 for meal and rent. And if you add the transport plus utilities, such as for your internet bills, your SIM card bills, as well as your transport, whether you're taking MRT or bus, so I roughly calculate about, in my experience, I pay about $300 for utilities plus transport monthly in Singapore at the time. So if you add that into the previous total, it becomes about 2,340 Singapore dollars monthly for me. So if you compare 2,340 Singapore dollars versus the previously 12.1 million rupiah per month, so if you convert these into Singapore dollars, it's roughly about 1,150. So 1,150 compared to 2,340 is about half, okay? About half the cost in Jakarta compared to in Singapore. So yeah, that's in my experience. So yeah, living in Jakarta is definitely more affordable, but it all depends also on your lifestyle and your habits. if you cook at home, both prices can be cheaper because yeah, definitely you can get cheaper ingredients from the grocery store or the supermarket. But yeah, there are always ways to save money and be more thrifty. And I think yeah, that's my experience of living in these two countries. So tell me about yours, and it'll be good to discuss more about this. And then yeah, I think that's it tonight for the sharing session. And for the next video, I'll talk more about the working culture here in Jakarta versus in Singapore. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, in the meantime, I hope you guys are staying healthy and safe. And yeah, I'll see you next time. And thank you so much for tuning in, guys. All right, see you. Bye bye.